Hello, I am Bea Marshall. I'm the founder of Yes Parenting, and I am thrilled today to be joined by Lindsay Guttridge, who has been journeying alongside me for a little while in terms of Yes Parenting. Lindsay has the most amazing personal kind of family setup to share with you in a minute. So, Lindsay, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm
It's
honoured.
my pleasure. It's great to have you here. You also work with EFT with parents in the same way that I do, but you come at it from a slightly different angle, and your passion is really about working with parents who have children that express kind of pathological demand avoidance or explosive behaviour. So before we go into that, would you tell us a little bit about you as a mom and your family setup and kind of what's led you into focusing your work in this way?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think before I became a mum, I worked as a therapist and as an EFT practitioner and all kinds of energy therapies and things, and went on a big journey. So just to give you some context, I think there was already a lot behind me. And that hugely influenced my journey coming into parenting, and probably is what led me to be quite an automatic yes parent. I found Bea's work through my journey, but I think I was already quite aligned with that way of being. And I think it's really from sitting with myself and sitting with clients and seeing the struggle that comes through resistance of allowing just what is,
Right.
and I think that really formed in me a choice to allow my child or children, whatever came for me, to be able to freely express themselves and to shine out with their own unique gifts and talents, and just hold that space for them to really unfold for who they were. And doesn't that just sound wonderful? and then I had this beautiful pregnancy. We had this lovely home birth. Everything was unfolding in the way I would have dreamt it to be, very, very natural and supportive. And I was really aligned with, like I said, yes parenting techniques, and really just responding to my child where she was as she was. And what happened was her behaviours and responses were really challenging.
Yeah.
And that took us both as parents down a rabbit hole, because we had to really question whether we were doing the right thing. Because when you have a child who has, as I'm going to talk more about, very explosive behaviour, or what we would call challenging behaviour because it doesn't fit in with the mainstream expectation, you have to stop and ask, is this okay? Is what I'm doing okay? Is this really supporting her? And I think because I had worked with a lot of children, worked with a lot of schools, and seen a lot of various experiences and challenges and methods of support, I had maybe some more internal confidence in what we were doing. But it was still really hard. It was really hard. And it led us to wonder what was triggering her so much when we felt like we were being so supportive.
Yes.
And looking into things like sensory challenges and autism, and all the research that led us to slowly understand what her particular needs and triggers were, so we could support her better. And we are so grateful, looking back, that we were able to keep the confidence and keep the space and not fall into the pressure and the huge demand that's on parents to ask their child to conform, to ask themselves to feel like they have some control over their child.
Right.
Because I can't even imagine what we could have set up for her if we had gone down that path because of our own self-doubt.
Yeah.
So so huge gratitude looking back.
So there's, oh goodness, there are so many things in what you just shared that I would love to kind of dive into, but there were a couple of things that just really leapt out at me. One was where you talked about the kind of almost the expectation or the demand on parents to have control over their children. So that was one thing. And as you're probably aware, within Yes Parenting, I talk about having power with our children, you know, having power and autonomy and choice within our lives, you know, being the agents of our own lives is a valid human need. And so having power with our children honors that in both our child and us. So that was the first thing. The second thing was earlier when you were describing your wonderful journey, and I'm really grateful to you for sharing so much of that, was you talked about, as an observer of the families you were working with, you saw that when families kind of resisted and tried to shut down the explosive behaviors, the challenging behaviors, that what happened was that they got stuck, and that you wanted to explore a different way where instead of getting stuck in resistance, you were able to flow with whatever your child, in this case your daughter, presented to you. And that really, again, brought me back to Yes Parenting, because I often talk about no being a contracting word. No kind of shuts things down. It makes things smaller. It encloses and contracts, whereas yes expands and opens up, and it allows us to flow. So thinking about this idea of moving away from having power over our children, especially when we have a child who has particularly challenging or explosive behaviors that conventional parenting would say, you know, my child just needs to learn to X, Y, and Z. And finding this balance with how we flow into a yes response in the face of, you know, a conventional society kind of often making us doubt. Could you go into that a little bit more? Because I think that's such a pivotal point for so many parents. They want to flow and expand into yes, but there is that self-doubt of like, am I doing the right thing? And then there's the conventional world saying, are you sure you're doing the right thing?
Absolutely.
So let's hear more about that.
Yeah, and it's hugely challenging, and it's one of the reasons that we personally made the choice to go down the diagnosis road, because we choose to home educate, and we already felt like we were offering the most supportive responses and lifestyle for our daughter. We could have decided just to respond to her as she was and not gone down that route. But it felt really empowering to have that validation when we live in a society that the educational and the medical and just actually just the mainstream consciousness is really quite challenging of a parent who chooses to allow their child that much autonomy, that much freedom, and that much control over their own choices. And I think if you are fortunate like us to have family and friends and support and resources and knowledge to empower you, then you find yourself in a much better position than many do, where they can feel extremely vulnerable. And when, as a parent, you find yourself in a place of fear, which is underneath that huge doubt usually, then your brain is shutting down in the same way that your child's brain is shutting down, and you're really stuck in a difficult position then. And so I'm a big fan of anything that is empowering to the parent to feel more confident in usually what is that already their instincts and intuition is already telling them.
Yes.
And I think it would be extremely unfair to imply in any way that work is only of the parent, because that is the work of society at large, to be much more empowering of the whole family environment to support that. But the work can start with the parent in finding their power within themselves, and that comes from knowledge and information, but it also comes from a feeling within themselves and a sense of security and self-esteem and faith in their intuition and deep knowing of their child.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because my own parenting journey was such that because of things that happened with my first born very early on in his life, I had so many voices coming in from the outside telling me what I should do and how I should do it, and every single one was different. So I had the health visitor, the mother-in-law, the media, the books, and I felt completely anchorless. And having gone through my pregnancy, really trusting my instincts and really believing that I could trust my instincts moving forward, suddenly all these other voices coming in, and not one of them saying, you know your child better than anyone. You have wisdom inside you that knows what you and your child need. No one said that to me. And so then I found myself floundering and grasping at straws. Now, I'm very grateful for that experience, because that was all part of my journey that led to yes parenting. It led to me raising two boys that each has additional needs beyond kind of average human needs. But I just take each child as they are, and it's like, well, what are their needs? And it doesn't bother me whether those are additional needs. It's just that is my child, and that is my child's needs, and I find the yeses to that to the best of my ability. So when I heard you talking about, like, this isn't just on the parents, this is on society, I felt this real kind of like, oh, yes. And yet we can't change anybody else. We can only change ourselves. So I love that the way you talked about empowering the parents to trust their instincts, to trust their own knowledge of their child, to kind of believe that they can find the right way, and also the flow that comes with that just sounded really amazing. So talk a little bit about demand avoidance, because that's a very specific thing. But although obviously when a child is diagnosed with pathological demand avoidance, it's on past a certain point, like on a spectrum. But it's that, a lot of children avoid demands because often our demands negate their power and their
parents
choice. And parents. So could you talk more about that, the whole idea of demand avoidance and the challenges that throws up?
Gosh, there was a lot of things coming up when you were talking. I just wanted to say really briefly, and then I promise I'll talk about PDA and demand avoidance. But I think the story you were sharing, one you've shared before in your group, was about your son's eczema. Is that right?
Yes.
And Eliza also had infant eczema, so I really related to that. And the thing that I would draw the parallel with of both of my experiences with her eczema and her unfolding of understanding her PDA is the sense of immediacy as a parent to find a resolution, because every moment is so painful and tiring, and my natural instinct as a person, as a therapist, is to accept things unfolding in time. But when you're in that moment, when you're that parent desperately wanting to resolve the pain, whatever it is around, it's such a desperate feeling. And like you said, to have practitioners or friends or family coming in with their more and more information is stifling and exhausting and confusing. And I really just wanted to relate back to that, because I really felt that when you were talking. And it's a big thing which spans whatever those challenges are for a parent, doesn't it? But PDA, pathological demand avoidance, is part of the autism spectrum. And that is a really complex place to go into, because health practitioners themselves are extremely conflicted and confused around what the diagnosis procedure and the language around that would involve.
Sure.
The way I would understand it myself, and this is, I'm no expert, I'm just a parent of a child who has PDA, so this is just my personal understanding, is that the response you get will vary around the country. But the general advice from the National Autistic Society is to understand that the autistic spectrum is something that could be diagnosed in general, and then to use descriptive language to look at the particular profile of the child to best communicate their needs, so that they can be given the best support. And that is the purpose of a diagnosis. And the child may not be able to communicate effectively their needs. And it may be that there are too many people involved in a child's life. That, for example, the parent can't be the only person understanding what their needs are. So there needs to be a common language to understand the kind of support that would be most appropriate.
Sure.
So under the autistic spectrum, PDA is one profile, and it's fairly new, which in medical terms means anything within about 30 years. Okay, that's what we mean by new. So, but if you have parents watching from another country, you may find that it's not accepted yet. You may find that people who are going down the route of their GP and CAMS are finding that in their county it's not being accepted. But I would really encourage you to talk to them about how you understand that you're seeing the signs of autism, which are signs of social communication and sensory challenges, and talk about the particular things that you're seeing in your child, fixed thinking, and show them that you understand that this is part of, this is part of a whole spectrum, but you also see these particular aspects which are encouraging you to look at particular techniques to support your child best. Yeah. And that's where demand avoidance comes into this conversation, because PDA is the extreme form of demand avoidance, where the demand avoidance is a setup in the brain to resist all demands. That could be a direct demand, which you would say, put your shoes on now, we're going out. Even with polite language around that, that's still a direct demand. It could be a more indirect demand, like, would you like pasta or chips for tea? They've still got to make a choice within that. There's still a demand to choose one of those things. Choices can be really helpful, but it can be a demand within that as well. But it can be an implied or even a demand that comes from the person themselves. So we were talking actually on a group last night, and I'm just talking about general stuff, not sharing any particular personal stories, but things like a story could be a demand because it has a set ending, or a jigsaw puzzle could be a demand because it has a set format. So it's a really deep imprint in the brain that sets off a fear response. The amygdala in the brain, that primitive part of the brain, starts firing out these alert signals, and that's when you get what's talked about with this explosive kind of like sudden reaction and behavior, this fight, flight or freeze behavior that we all know about. And that comes from this deep fear by something that can seem really confusing from the outside until you really understand what's going in with demands, because they can be really subtle things. It can be something that your child has decided themselves they want to do and then can't allow themselves, like go on a day out, something they really, really want to do and they've been looking forward to, but now they've built it up to become a demand within themselves, and now they're resisting
Wow.
it.
Okay.
And that can seem really confusing for a parent, because they've chosen it, you know, and they've wanted it, and you've planned it, and everything's around them and their desires, and then all of a sudden they don't want to go. So that can seem really confusing. But demand avoidance is actually a huge part of the autism spectrum in general. And there is lots of information out there about the difference between demand avoidance and pathological demand avoidance, if you're looking to find out more for your child. But demand avoidance within the spectrum is usually something that comes up around certain events or situations, rather than just this like blanket need to avoid all demands.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm thinking about as you're talking is that is certainly for people who might be new to the autistic spectrum, or might be watching this video thinking, well, my child isn't autistic, is that actually the whole point of a spectrum is it starts at one point and then it builds and it ends at another point. So each of us can find ourselves at different points on the spectrum. But a diagnosis wouldn't be appropriate, because we're not ticking boxes across, you know, a range of elements. But I'm thinking about toddlers, for example, or children who find transitioning really difficult. You know, getting out of the door in the mornings, going to bed at night, issues around food, or all sorts of things. You know, a child doesn't need to be diagnosed on the spectrum for them to find certain demands within their life really difficult. Is that right?
Absolutely right. And I absolutely relate to it. And because of parenting a child and being really tuned into her demand triggers, of course it makes you look at what your triggers are. And I don't consider myself to be autistic or to have any demand avoidance, but absolutely I'm tuned into demands in my life. It can be, and it can be things that I've chosen myself. This morning we've made an appointment to talk and make this call, but when it comes round, is that, am I going to feel in tune with that? Am I going to feel in the mood for that at that time that I've picked it? Is it going to be convenient? You know, there's a demand to be available at that time that I've pre-scheduled, and that's kind of, that's a cultural way that we've set ourselves up to actually to schedule things rather than to be in that flow and immediacy that we all feel the push against. You know, the demands of Facebook messages, and you know, I run a group for people with who are parents with children with PDA, and I get notifications, ping, 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 ping. Now, every single one of those are messages that I want to receive. They are from people who I want to respond to. I don't choose to follow social media that I don't want to have involvement with, you know. So it's absolutely a choice, but it doesn't stop it from getting overwhelming. And we all relate to that, you know.
Oh, goodness, absolutely. I found myself taking a really big, deep breath then, because, you know, I have certain boundaries within my own life to protect me from what I experience as demand. So all of my notifications are turned off on my Facebook app and on my Messenger app, and on my laptop, my notifications are turned off. Because what I do know is when I have had those notifications turned on, that when they come through, I get an immediate like kind of, and it's just a little notification, but my whole body goes into this kind of, it's tightening. And what's so interesting is, you know, I'm 39, and that's how I respond to a Facebook notification coming through on my phone. Now, if I'm 5 or 6 and my parent is saying, right, you know, we need to go in 10 minutes, you need to get your shoes on, you need to go to the loo, come on. That level of, you know, demand that seems so realistic and appropriate to the parent, but that small child is again like this potential kind of like, oh, kind of thing. And you know, and I as we're talking, I mean, I'm aware of these things anyway because of my own boys and because of you know, the way that I see children and see human beings who, yes, parenting. But as we're talking, it's almost like it's opening up new layers of understanding for me. I so appreciate like what you're bringing to this conversation, because it's meeting needs in me, I think, for kind of depth and kind of awareness and increased insight, which, you know, I love that. As ever, Lindsay, I know we could talk for hours, but I want to honour your time, my time, and also the time of the listeners. So when you're coming into my subscription group as a guest expert later on this month, and you're going to be specifically looking at how we use EFT, or tapping as it's also known, when we have children who have explosive behaviour, demand avoidance, or we have children who just happen to be in a stage of life where that is a particular kind of behavioural trait. And I'm really looking forward to it. But not everyone watching this video is a member of my group, although
they should be
easy to join my group.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's details about that at the end of the video. But right now, there are people watching this who aren't members of the group. So I wonder if you could share some top tips for how to move out of this kind of stuck, potentially rigid way of resisting your child's challenging behaviour or explosive behaviour, and instead begin to flow in a responsive and expansive way.
Let me do my best. Okay.
You will be brilliant.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's very lovely of you. I think because, like B, I work with EFT, I always come back first to the invitation to bring it all back to yourself. And if something is triggering you, and please know I say this from a place of being absolutely on a journey with it myself, that if something is triggering you, just to be still and listen to the voices and the memories that come up around that. Because a lot of the time what is triggering us is not actually what's in that moment, but something that's come from our past or is a fear we have of the future to come. So I think first, just stop, bring it back to yourself and listen would be my top tip. The next thing I would say is that when we are experiencing resistance, in EFT terms, we would call that a disruption in the body's energy system, which is, for me, a feeling or a sense a bit like static or a kind of zzz in, you know, you just get this like agitation or this sense of just being off. You're not in your calm place. So if you're recognizing that, then I would really invite you not to push that feeling away, but to experience it and either do some tapping or to find some quiet to allow yourself to experience that and tell yourself that it's okay. Because the more we push it away or make it something not about ourselves, the more the resistance builds up. And it's very, very easy to get into a place where if you are having a parenting experience where your child is not as you had imagined or how you believe it should be, that you make that something wrong or at fault with yourself. Okay, my third thing would be, I asked in my group, actually, that I said I was coming to talk to B, and that what is it that you feel as parents of children with PDA, which can take you on quite an extensive and extreme journey as a parent, how do you think that relates to all parents? What knowledge and wisdom would that bring forward? and had some wonderful responses. But a big one was that control is an illusion. Yes. And I just went, yeah, so much yes to that.
Yeah.
How many layers of that do we carry? I mean, I absolutely own, even for myself this morning, like I was saying, I've scheduled a call to come here and talk to you. This means something to me. It's important to me. And I've made it be, I can hear some noise coming up the stairs. We'll see what comes. I've made it mean something about me, that I am reliable, dependable. I commit to my appointments. You know, I'm a counsellor. So I've learned that holding space for people and being available and holding that time is important. And here I am in my life where I can't always offer that. So what does that mean about me? Well, actually, it doesn't really mean anything about me except what I make it mean about me.
Absolutely.
And if I am absolutely set on controlling the situation so that I can be available for this space this morning, I promise you that is absolutely going to be what causes the resistance that prevents that from happening. Because my daughter, I can absolutely say, and I know many, many children, if they're allowed to tune into it, are so sensitive to that energy of feeling any sense of control. And me needing her to go to be with somebody else and be occupied and happy for me to go off is a sense of control. And she will absolutely resist that if I am really hung up on that. And but that's really hard for me, you know, and I've been doing this work for a really long time. Yeah. And I really keep coming back and saying that because I'm not putting this information or this thinking out in any way saying that there is some place you will reach on the journey where this just all goes away. But I would absolutely say that the years and years of journeying and work that I did before I became a parent is nothing to what's come forward since being on this amazing journey. So I think my last top tip is to fully experience it and really delve into it and allow it and enjoy it. Yeah. And I don't mean enjoy it from a place of surface level, happy, we're having fun, this is all great, you know, that's not life. Enjoy the imperfectness, the wisdom and the button pressing, you know, that's part of it too, because that will shift you, that will grow you, that will bring you more into yourself. And for me, that's what this life is all about.
Yeah, beautiful. And that last point really reminded me of one of the questions that I often ask within Yes Parenting, which is, what is the gift that your child is giving you in this situation? And often in the midst of a meltdown or a tantrum or, you know, these kinds of explosive or challenging behaviors, when we can step back and ask ourselves, like, what is the gift for me here? Which might be an invitation to heal, or an invitation just to love and accept our child for who they are in this moment. And, you know, to kind of learn how to release that control. That is part of that journey of enjoying what is. And, so amazing to talk with you this morning. I just feel so honored for the way, you know, the way our journeys have connected. And I, you know, want to express appreciation and gratitude to you for your time this morning and sharing so much wisdom. And I can't wait to welcome you into my group in a couple of weeks' time. So thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, babe.
And at the end of this video, I want to let you know that there is going to be information for how to get in touch with Lindsay. Lindsay talked about EFT and tapping for you as a parent in response to having a child with these kinds of behaviors. And, you know, both Lindsay and I do that work, but both Lindsay and I mean, I'm speaking for Lindsay, and it's okay if Lindsay wants to say, actually, I disagree, but I'm sure that Lindsay would agree with me that both of us would want you to pursue support with the person and the space that is right for you.
Absolutely.
And Lindsay and I are not in competition. We are here collaborating and supporting each other, and there is more than enough for both of us. So, you know, there is information at the end if you want to get in touch with Lindsay and pursue support with Lindsay for the challenges you're facing, that information is going to be there. And also at the end of this video is information on how to join my subscription group. It's called Yes Parenting for Happy Families. And I would love to welcome you into that. It's an incredible space for your Yes Parenting journey. So once again, Lindsay, thank you so much.
Thank you, darling.
Yeah, and we will see all of you very soon.
Bye.